Hi, everyone. Welcome to our kickoff meeting for our round 29 grantees. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. I see that there are already 70 people in here. That's a wonderful amount of folks to really get to know each other as an incoming cohort of grantees and people who are going to make a huge difference in their classrooms. And then when they share out their stuff across the globe. I'm Jeff Gallant. I'm the program director of Affordable Learning Georgia. We are part of Galileo, and I am a librarian. We also have with us Nikita Afaha. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nikita Afaha, and I am the program manager for Affordable Learning Georgia, and I am an instructional designer by trade.
All right. So we are going to go on to the agenda. So Nikita, why don't you give us a rundown of what's going to happen today, and then we will go into introductions.
All right, great. There we go. Okay, so today we are going to get started. Of course, we're doing our welcome. We have some introductions for you guys, the project team introductions. The OER and accessibility discussion. We'll have a 10-minute break. The SLA and invoices, reporting and timeline communications, and our midpoint check-in, and we'll also have Q&A.
All right. The next part here is for everybody to introduce themselves. Now, the link should be clickable on Teams, but just in case, I've got a QR code up here. And if neither of those work, I've got the entire URL under that QR code. Okay, yep, Bryn says it's clickable for me. Awesome. This is a Padlet. Some of you are probably familiar with Padlet if you've been using technology and instruction before. It's pretty common. It's a great way we've found for a whole bunch of people at the same time to introduce themselves by creating a post. So what you're going to want to do is going to be a little post button on the bottom right corner. You click that, and then you type something about yourself, your name, institution, your project, your role, what are you looking forward to, and include things like your photos, your pets, your hobbies, anything like that. That would be good in introducing yourself. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to keep this slide up for now. I'm not going to share my screen on it. But if you do have any trouble getting into the Padlet, please let me know. Dr. Liu, so right now I've got just a slide with the introduce yourself and the link to the Padlet on there.
Hey,
Are you?
Jeff, I can't see. It just said it's crashed.
Oh, well. Are you using the web version of Teams by any chance?
No, it's a desktop version.
Huh. Hmm. You might have to restart it. The old Microsoft trick. Yeah.
I'll leave and I'll come back, okay?
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing some of the posts come in. Thank you so much. Okay.
All right, I don't know, Jeff, if we're going to share the Padlet screen at this point, or you want to.
Doing a bit of tech support here. So what I'm going to do is put this in the chat for you, Dr. Liu, so that you can at least get over to the Padlet. I'm not sure what's happening on your side of things.
And I am tasked with just kind of going over our introductions. We do appreciate you guys participating in our Padlet introductions. Previously, we would have our kickoff meetings and allow each team to introduce themselves verbally, and there wasn't enough time to be able to hear the good things about your projects and about your teams. So this way, we have an archive of it. Jeff, we're seeing your entire one of your entire screens now. Your
Whoops.
email, yeah, your
There we
email.
go.
There we
Oh
go. Yeah.
no. You've seen all my secrets.
All your secrets, indeed.
Hold on. Let me see if I can do this a little bit better. Here we go. That should do it.
Indeed.
All right.
So now we have kind of an archive here of our introductions. And we're so happy to have you all joining us with all of your projects. Let's see, I'm just scrolling through to see a couple and enjoying the entertainment and the pets and everything that I'm seeing, trying to find which one I'll start with. But yes, we have welcome.
We have 2 instances of Kermit the Frog. That's a good sign.
Oh yeah, indeed. Let's see. Okay, because I'm trying to see where it's putting them in. Okay. It's a little bit different. The Padlet is a little bit different than last time just because it's updating, Jeff.
Oh, the newest one is coming up to the top of the screen. I think that's what's going on here.
Yeah, it is. So as I'm trying to read it, it's moving. So unfortunately, I'll go to the bottom, but even so, as I'm reading, it moves. So that's okay. We will adjust. But we wanted to, welcome everyone in. Yeah, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to read it. I can't keep up with the moves.
Oh, that's all right. I'll do that from here. So, yep, we just saw David Beek just popped in at less than a minute ago here. We see Letitia Warren. We see, we see Dragana. Hello. We got a presentation from Georgia Tech CTL. Excellent. From Dr. Hull, Dr. Raymond, and Dr. Zhu. Welcome Priya. So a lot of folks here have a real varied experience. Some people are very new to either zero cost or open materials. Other ones have been creating open textbooks for quite a while. It's nice to see all of this for sure. Very cute cat, a very cute dog giving a kiss. Wonderful. So we've got, some people are making writing resources, zero cost materials for game design courses. Oh, this is great. So Dr. Jank has a commenter from Tommy Stell, both grantees. One of them took the class at CSU. It took his class at CSU in 2017. That's really cool. We got no new folks in here. Got a basketball player generated as well. Very neat. All right.
I'm also seeing some familiar names. Welcome back to some of our past grantees who are engaging this round. Glad to have you.
Some folks are working with generative AI and agentic-based content. That's very cool. We've seen, we just added today a renewable assignments creator that is all about prompt engineering. And it's just one self-contained HTML document from Dr. Takahashi, and it's real neat to have that there. Oh, and Uli says, I own 2 cats and foster many cats, also 5 chickens. And then we have somebody else in here that said, I am a habitual foster cat failure. I think that usually means that the cats stay with you. All right. Dr. Paula and her team are developing an open source organic chemistry and sustainability textbook for introductory organic undergraduate courses. Very neat. Oh, wow. And so we've got a reverse in chat. Dr. Hull says my family also has 5 chickens and 2 cats. Cat themed leadership book, Cats Don't Carpool. Wow, all right.
I'm seeing a couple of chemistry projects come through. It's always good to see the STEM disciplines represented in the projects. That's good.
Dr. Briggs has her daughter visiting for her 24th birthday. Very cool.
We've got Dr. Barnhart from UWG with a research grant, which we're interested in hearing about that. This is good. Yeah, we really appreciate everyone participating here in the Padlet. It's really important not only for us to understand other projects that are happening, but also for inspiration. We want you to be able to look through these and gain some ideas for maybe your next project, or for ways for collaborations, for things you may want to collaborate with another other grantees for the next round, proposals, that kind of thing. As well as you're thinking about your project and future projects, maybe continuous improvement after this round, seeing what other expertise is already experienced in these grants. And so it'll be good to have this repository here for you to refer back to.
Yeah, it's great to visualize everyone as one big group too. When you're doing these grant projects, often you're within your own teams, you're within your own institutions, maybe you're working across an institution, but you really do have this entire group of grantees who are doing all these cool projects together. And to see everybody in one place, it's really nice.
Indeed, and as you'll find out, we talk a little bit more about this later on in the session today, but there is a midpoint check-in. And so you may find that there are others who are working in your discipline or working on similar projects, and you may need to collaborate together just to kind of overcome some of the challenges you may be incurring. And so this is a great place for us to kind of get to know each other for that reason as well. Not to mention, just generate some excitement and some motivation, momentum as we get started kicking off today with your projects. We are very excited for this round. There were a lot of quality proposals, and it was difficult to narrow it down, but that's what we've done. And so we're excited to get started with you guys. All right, it looks like it's slowing down a little bit, so that's good.
All right. So I think we're going to move on. If you're sharing something or you're in the middle of that, please still do it. This Padlet's still going to be here, and keep this open so folks can keep introducing themselves as well. Indeed. I'm going to jump back to our PowerPoint, which means that I have to restart it. Someday Teams will figure that part out. That is not today, unfortunately. There we go. All right. So I will start with a rundown here of just kind of some things that you've already gone over in your training, some things that you might know, but really a refresher. And then we'll go into accessibility and how that applies to all of this OER stuff, to no-cost stuff, and to low-cost stuff. But especially, we do need to talk a bit about open resources. Not everybody is going to be using open educational resources. Some folks will be using no-cost resources that have regular copyright. Some folks will be using low-cost resources and low-cost courseware. That is totally fine. If you've got a project in here, then both the peer reviewers and we thought it was a very cool project. But if you've heard of OER and you're like, well, exactly what is that? We're going to go a little bit over that in here. So the general description of OER is that you've got open educational resources. So the resources part, that's books, that's videos, that's podcasts, that could be many different kinds of formats. The educational part is kind of self-explanatory. It's what you are using to teach within a particular course. And the open part is the unique part of all of this, which means it is open licensed. So when you create these resources, other folks can download those resources and then they can repurpose them for their students and their course. Let's say that you have an organic chemistry course over here and somebody else has an inorganic chemistry course, but they have a little bit of content that they really liked in here. They can take that, they can use it, and they will attribute the original work. So that's a really neat part of this. So they are free resources for sure, but it goes beyond that because they're flexible. When you have an open license on something, you're giving permissions to customize those resources, to make them more current, to put them in a new language, to make them what you would consider better, to put more high resolution images in there. It's if you don't like a particular thing, you say, I don't really like the quality of it. You could be the one that makes it amazing. And all of a sudden, everybody's got a great resource out of that. And they are expert authored and expert shared. Everybody in here is USG faculty member, USG professional staff. When we share out our open educational resources, they are ones that have been used in USG institutions by USG instructors. And you'll see that across just about all open educational resources, that they're ones that instructors are teaching with, and they will let you know who they are and what you're able to do with those resources. Now, Creative Commons licenses can be a little bit intimidating at first because you'll see an abbreviation. It'll say something like CC by NCSA. And that's a lot of letters. And you'd be like, oh no, I have another learning curve to go through while I'm doing all of this other work. It's really not too big of a deal. You've got 4 different building blocks for a Creative Commons license. They start with attribution. Just about every Creative Commons license out there starts with the attribution requirement, or by. That means that if you use somebody else's open educational resource within yours to make your open textbook or your open video, you then make sure that you are attributing the original work, that this part was revised from this text over here. Here's the license on it, it's CC BY. And linking to it is even better. Make sure that you include the title and the author if you're attributing anything. And what's great about that is that you're passing not just the credit onto the original creator, but the history of that resource. So when we first introduce OER to someone who doesn't know about it, and they think, well, if I'm going to go out there and share these resources and someone can customize them, can they make like a terrible version of it? Wouldn't that make me look bad? Well, not if you're attributing things correctly. The person who made the bad version is attributing the original version. So you have to go back to the original version to know what that is. You've got this kind of history of the customized resource right there in this practice, making sure that you attribute the original work. So that's why it's the foundation of these open licenses. It's the thing that links it back to the original. The other ones are optional. And for our purposes, 2 of them work pretty well. One is non-commercial. Non-commercial means that if you are using any different version of this resource, then you have to make sure that you are not profiting from it. Now, that can get a little bit complicated. Let's say that you want to make a print version for folks who cannot use a computer or do not have internet access, and you have to like ship something to their house, or you have to have it at the library or something along those lines, or just somebody who prefers print. That is okay. And if you use a third party to print them out and you pay that third party to do so, it's okay on their end as well. Creative Commons does not expect you to own a print shop and be able to print out a textbook. So what they're talking about with non-commercial is, let's say that you got that print text and then you sold it at a markup of 20%. At that point, you are using it for commercial use. If a bookstore sells a print copy of an open resource at no other cost than the cost it took to print the resource, it's okay. So that's the weird thing that happens with NC. So if you add NC, it can get a little bit weird for folks who have to deal with print, but not too badly. There are some subjects out there where maybe a company has been watching this stuff like a hawk and they're using it for their training resources and you don't like that company. You could do NC on yours. You could put it in there as by NC for the restriction, just to make sure it's not being used for commercial profit use. Share alike is a lot like the old open source community when you would create software. Their licenses were all about, this is free, you can make something new from this thing, but you need to share it under the same exact license, because we're going to pass that freedom along as these new things get created from the original. That's a really nice thing to do. Now, if you have by NCSA and somebody has a almost quasi-commercial use and they're not quite sure, they can get confused by that. But for the most part, SA is just a really nice way to pass the responsibility of keeping things open to all. The fourth one is one that you'll want to look out for. No derivatives, or ND, means that you can download this resource, you can make a copy of it as it is, you can share it with other folks, but you can't revise it. So you can't update it, you can't make a new 2026 version of a sociology text that was made in like 2018 if it had an ND on it. You couldn't redo the tone for your particular students, or you couldn't gear it towards a different career aim. Like, all of that customization goes away when you have an ND on the Creative Commons license. Now, it works sometimes. It works especially in artistic resources. So let's say that you're not doing an educational resource, you're doing something for the purpose of expression. Well, maybe you don't want that expression to be remixed. ND works in that case. You're presenting data on cancer research and it has to be open and you want people to be able to share it, but you don't want people to remix and revise your cancer research. ND works for that. But for education, where everyone's students are going to be different, where everybody's teaching styles are going to be different, try to allow for as much customization as you possibly can and avoid ND. So anything that's CC by, great. CC by NC, CC by SA, CC by NC, SA, all good. ND means that folks are restricted in what they can do with these resources, and in education, doesn't work so well. Now, OER is great because it can be sustainable just by design. If your team creates a resource and then we share it out with the world in our repository, hopefully more faculty are going to find that resource and adopt it. Other teams might adopt it and then say, hey, we're going to make a new version of this. We're going to make a Canadian version of this business textbook because things are different in Canada. And all of a sudden you have new resources that have been revised and shared. And then other teams might bring in 5 or 6 of those materials and create a new comprehensive resource. That's called remixing, where you're bringing more than one cool thing together into one place. And then they would share that out. So you have all of these new resources, then those resources are shared openly, then more people adopt those, and then there's more revisions and remixing. So in a way, open educational resources and the way in which we share them and the permissions that we give allow this stuff to be sustainable, so long as somebody wants to bring it in and do something cool with it. So it's a it's a nice way of making sure that when something's created, it doesn't just disappear, and that folks can make it more modern as things go along. Now, accessibility is the tough part about creating anything and releasing it to the world. You want to make sure that all of your learners are able to access the information that you are trying to give them, and that nobody's left behind in that nobody's discriminated against. There was a requirement in the ADA that said that if you're going to release anything that as a public entity, which means an institution, a university system that is used to participate in any programs or services, it needs to comply with some baseline accessibility guidelines. And they used a set of web accessibility guidelines called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It's from a pretty authoritative organization on the web, folks who really did build a lot of the structures that govern what the web is. So that's really good. But it is geared a lot towards web resources and towards software, which means that you kind of have to infer a few things from it instead of just finding all of the direct things that you would want when you're creating a Word document or when you're creating a PowerPoint set of slides. Also, these are level AA. AA is the middle one. So it's not a completely like, well, this is almost accessible type of thing like A is. It's not spending so much money and hiring so many staff that you can make it maximally accessible, which is like AAA. If you've got sign language interpretation for every video, you need a sign language interpreter in order to do that. It's not easy to get all of that done. It would be cool. It's amazing if you aim for that level of accessibility, but it isn't everyone. So that's okay. So we're level AA is right in the middle there. Now, there are exceptions for documents that we're sharing out, but if you're using them in services and activities, they need to comply. So if you've got a report that says, here's how our grant went, that's going to be not, we're not going to be worried too much about that. The final reports, we've designed them in an accessible way so that anyone can access them, anybody can interact with them, anybody can add in their information. But if you've got a graph in there and it lacks alt text, it's a report. It's not something that anyone's going to use for services and activities. If you're creating an open textbook, any time that that's used in a classroom, students are being required to interact with it as an activity, and immediately that would be a requirement. Now, this was in 2026. This was going to be due April 2026. Instead, it got delayed by a year because people just did not have enough time to get their stuff accessible. We've had these checks in place since the beginning of 2025 to make sure that when you're contributing any open educational resources to us, that we check them over to make sure that they fit the accessibility guidelines. But there are going to be some institutions that are not ready for that yet, so they gave them an extra year. We are moving right forward. We are moving along just like everything was required right now, though. So now you know a lot about accessibility, why it's there, and what's happening in the world of federal regulations on it. And the web guidelines that govern accessible content, not all of them are going to apply to most OER. If you're creating software, more of them will apply than this. But if you're creating an open textbook, open video, open audio, open slides, those are mostly going to fit within the first major guideline, which is that they are perceivable by all. So if you have a photo, then it needs to have a text alternative if you're conveying any kind of information. If you've got, for example, a diagram of a molecule, you have to describe what that diagram is for somebody who can't see the diagram. They still need to understand what that molecule is and what the structure of it is in your course. So alt text like that is especially done by the original authors. Folks who come in and try to do some accessibility work on the back end, they're not always going to be experts in their field the way that you are. So be sure to create that alternative text right where you are and craft it so that anyone who is taking your course has the same information, whether they can see a photo or hear the alt text. Word and PowerPoint have really easy ways to do this. You just right click and you go view alt text and you can just type it right in. Other places are going to be a little bit different. If you do HTML, you'll need to know how to put a tag in there, but that's a little bit more on the advanced side of things. Things need to be adaptable too. So if you have a PowerPoint presentation, right, you should be able to read that on a screen. That is because PowerPoint knows what the text box is. It knows what the title slide is. It knows exactly what the title of each slide is. And when it checks for accessibility, it understands what the title of each slide is. So if two of them have the same title, it'll tell you, hey, you have to have a unique title for each so that you can jump to one or the other. And if you're in Word, you use this thing called styles and just use the headings there. If you've got chapters and you thought, well, I'm going to make these big chapter titles and put them in bold, you won't be able to navigate that way. If you got a screen reader, it'll go 300 pages before you reach page 300. But if you have headings in there, you've got a structure. So if your chapter is assigned heading 1, and each chapter is that, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, someone who is listening to the book can jump to chapter 6 very quickly, as opposed to listening to all of chapters 1 through 5 before they get there. If you have subchapters, even better, you can assign those heading 2. If you've got even more divisions, you can do a heading 3. Then people can jump to various sections of your chapters and you're able to go right to it. Plus, if you've got that structure and we bring it over into Manifold and we can make it into a web readable document, that structure will automatically turn into a menu that you can go to chapter 1, you can go to the subchapters immediately. If you don't like how the heading looks, and that is something that Microsoft will kind of do by default, customize the text in that thing that you've assigned the heading to, then go back up to the styles, right click that style and say, match the style of this text. Yeah, and Dr. Hardy has a really good point here. If you click the navigation pane in Word, you can navigate a document very quickly. And the navigation pane is kind of like seeing what a screen reader is going to be able to say in order to navigate. So you don't have to scroll for 200 pages and hurt your wrist in doing so, or hit page down and hope that you get to the right point. You can go to the navigation page and jump right to where you need. It also needs to be distinguishable. So if you've got a dark blue background and you've got dark red text on a dark blue background because you want it to be very expressive, and then it's kind of unreadable for everybody, that's not distinguishable. You can't distinguish the background from the text. Okay, just a second. Just got a chat message that needs a bit of.
Yeah, I was just checking, looking at that to see if I could help out.
Okay, hopefully that works. Sorry about that. So yeah, you're going to want to make sure that the background and the text have enough of a color contrast that you can discern the difference between the two, even if you've got some sight impairments going on. Contrast has to be usually 4.5 to 1 in a luminance ratio. You don't have to really know that so much as running the accessibility checker and seeing it. If the accessibility checker says you have to just manually check your contrast, then subjectively take a look at it. If it is easily distinguishable, the background and the text, then you're pretty much good. If it's not, then you definitely would want to make things more higher contrast. So if you've got a dark background, make that darker. If you've got text on that, you would make it lighter, that type of thing. Yeah, Microsoft can be weird sometimes with Teams. Sorry about all that. Um, and also, you should be able to, as a reader, be able to resize the text. So let's say you've got a giant screen and you've got 12-point font. Well, that 12-point font's readable when you're at a monitor. It's not if you've got a giant screen out in the distance. The same thing happens when you have a sight impairment where you need to blow things up. You need to be able to resize that text. That's very easy in Word. If you've tried it in a PDF, it can be complicated though. So stick to Word if it's easier for you. PDFs can do it. You just have to have it very accessible at that point. Dr. Hardy says there's a helpful site for knowing what people can and cannot see, especially when it comes to web resources. Yeah, the who can use is really good. And there's another thing that folks especially love to do back in the Twitter age. They would take a stylized picture of a quote with the person who said it and some really nice font, and they would have it as an image. And then people would put it in their PowerPoints that way. Then they wouldn't put any alt text in it. And so you would just wind up with a photo that has no text associated with it if you couldn't see. Use text if you can, instead of taking a photo of a quote or a photo of text in general. If you're having to type in all of the alt text from the photo of that text, it's kind of redundant at that point. There really should be a good reason for it. So there could be, like, for example, if you're teaching a history course and you've got a primary source there and you're showing a particular excerpt from that primary source in someone's handwriting, or it's back in cuneiform or something like that, you should be able to then describe that in alt text. And yeah, it's helpful for people to see it. But if it's just a little bit of a stylish thing, just use text instead for sure. Now, there are other chapters in these guidelines. They're not that useful if you're doing the usual OER stuff, your Word documents, your PDFs, your PowerPoints. You're using someone's software. You don't have to worry about what happens when you hit the tab key on a Word document. Word decides that part. But if you are making software, then you will need to know about things like making sure that you can operate everything just using a keyboard or just using a mouse, or making sure that if you've got a document that is in the English language, that you say it's in English to the screen reader so that the screen reader knows immediately when it starts reading, oh, this is in English. This especially applies if you've ever got anything in a language where you're reading from right to left, something like Arabic, something like Japanese. The screen reader would start over here and it would go, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on. And it would start reading things backwards at that point. So be sure to, if there is a field to say, here's what the language is, PDF, they do that a lot, say that it's in whichever language it's in. Make sure that things are robust. That is more about software. And then 5 is just how to do a report, how these requirements work, what happens if it's inaccessible. You don't usually have to worry too much about this, but if you do develop software, if you develop web content, be sure to check the rest of these requirements out. We check for the basic stuff that is paramount in OER, in common OER. They need to have alternative text if you have a photo, or captions. You don't need both. If you have alternative text and then you have the caption as the alternative text, it's going to read it twice. So you only need one or the other in that case. We usually prefer alt text, but if you're if you're doing captions for a print resource, that's totally fine as well. Making sure that the text is structured so that your chapters have headings to them. Making sure that your links are descriptive. So this Teams URL that I've got up here that I tried to help with in the chat, you wouldn't want to put that into a Word document because then the screen reader would read off just about every single letter and number of this, and it wouldn't make any sense. I would then put Microsoft Teams link or something like that, attach the hyperlink to it. Now you have a descriptive link. If you just say, you can go to the Microsoft Teams meeting and then you click, and then you highlight here and you attach the link just to that here, what the screen reader is going to do is when it reads a list of links, it's going to say here, 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 here. It won't tell you where it is. So be sure to describe what you're linking to and use it that way. Reading order, very important in PowerPoint. If you use the layouts that PowerPoint gives you, that you have a title box, you have a text box, you're going to be fine. It'll be able to be read without a problem. If you go to the outline view in PowerPoint, you should be able to see everything structured the way it would be read. If you start adding stuff, if you throw in like 3 or 4 photos, now it doesn't know exactly what to do. There's an accessibility tab you can enable, and then you just click reading order on it, and you can go through the reading order of each slide. It has a list of checkboxes and what order they're in, and if they need to be read at all. That's the really neat thing that you can do to fix it later on. But if you follow the layouts from the beginning, you should be okay. Color contrast, of course, again, it's 4.5 to 1 or higher. You can't just calculate that using your eyes, of course, but use your best judgment at first. If there is a checker you can use for it, then absolutely do so. It's great on the web. You can check that stuff immediately because there's a hex code for every color that it displays. In images, it's a little bit more difficult because they don't have that data right there. But yeah, make sure that the background and the text are distinguishable from each other. Now, let's say that you've got some less conventional but very cool open educational resources. Like you've got open software, you've got an open mathematics textbook that has readable equations. We're going to check those to the best of our abilities. We are not experts though, so I can tell that a code document in Python has a bunch of text in it, and then that text is readable. So if you're learning about Python and you want to see Python code, that's accessible. I don't know if you execute that code, whether or not everything that you've done is going to be accessible. So at that point, I'm out of my depth. We test things to the best of our abilities, but we cannot go too far. So we have ways to do that, but when it comes to more complex stuff, we can only check as far as we possibly can. But the biggest takeaway from this should be that when you start creating resources, create them accessible from the beginning. If you have to fix them later on, it gets harder and harder to do, especially if you've started in one application, exported an inaccessible PDF, and then the PDF doesn't know what to do. Like, it sometimes isolates every word and says that this is a block of text and we don't know what order it's in. You would not want to take 100,000 boxes and put them all in order at that point. So create something structured with alternative text right at the beginning, so that once you've exported it to different formats, those exports are hopefully accessible as well. You'll have to check those, but it's a lot easier when you make things accessibly to create more accessible stuff from them. So yeah, following PowerPoint's layouts is great. Use styles in Word for chapters and subchapters. If you add any images, immediately describe those in the alt text field. You don't want to have to go back and put alt text on 300 images later. Do one right when you do it, and it's at the top of your mind at that point. And stick to either light backgrounds with dark text or flip that around. If you can do the automatically assigned background and the automatically assigned text color for a particular theme, then when people enable dark mode and it shifts over, the color should invert so that if I have light text and I have a dark background, and then I've colored something else a slightly different color, but I needed to make it a light yellow over here. And here's everything else is by default light white. And then I switch it to light mode so that the background is now white and the text is now black. That part that I changed to yellow is probably still going to be bright yellow and you won't be able to read it. So the more that you stick with the default text in a theme, easier. And Nikita also has a great point here. Stay away from smart art in PowerPoint. It's one that I've been required to use in certain presentations, and it's not accessible. It's still viewed as an image, and you still need to put alt text in it, and you're creating an infographic. So then the alt text is laborious to make. So stay away from smart art if at all possible. We used to have smart art for this slide right here, and we've changed it over to ones where I've got like a square card and some text there that is read in the correct order because of that. So this is a lot. You're not going to be able to remember all of this at once. I sure was not able to when I first got introduced to accessibility. Be sure to check out the WCAG guidelines. The W3 Consortium has a ton of resources on it. And we have accessibility guides that are meant for OER creators in particular. Not for software developers, but more for faculty and for professional staff. So the OER accessibility series and rubric, that is the one that has all of our accessibility guides to it. I'm gonna share this in the chat just in case as well. Yeah, so there's some stuff in here for writing stuff in Word, making an accessible PowerPoint, the stuff that we talked about today. All right. Any questions before we take a break and then go on to the more like, here's the grant process part of this?
And feel free to unmute or drop your questions in the chat. And we do have a Q&A session coming up at the end, but we can definitely pause here for that.
Here's another accessibility thing, by the way. This one we changed to questions before the break because it is the title of the slide. And we had questions, and at the end we had questions. And that meant that a screen reader could not discern between the two. So we had to switch it. All right, well, let's take a 10-minute break. So it is 1:52 right now. I will see you at 2:02. We'll get back together and talk about the grant process and all that paperwork. So I will talk to y'all soon.
Hi, Jeff. I had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So the tip that you just shared, that Nikita shared about staying away from smart art. So will this not make these slides, I mean, all text and nothing much? I mean, having a smart art with as an image, having alt text, which is describing whatever is there in the smart art, is that not a good practice? I mean, because this is something which makes these slides interesting to, to the students who are there in the class. So
it is indeed a good practice if you are willing to make sure that the smart art is described appropriately in the alt text. Many times smart art actually has to, is used to, show cycles or show infographics and many layers and levels of information. And alt text must be descriptive so that it can be equal to what the image is. So if it's a lot of information in the smart art, then you will need to make sure that the alt text represents that. And so when you have a presentation that maybe, that's, quite a few pages and all of it has smart art on it, it's just pretty laborious for you. But it's a fine practice as long as you're able to meet the alt text requirements.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so Smart Art's a way of generating a series of shapes to get all of that going, right? Um, it's it winds up inaccessible as an image. Folks have been talking about this on the Microsoft forums. There is a way to convert your Smart Art to just the shapes and the words that have been there the whole time. So that can be done through, you'd have to check the reading order, but it can be converted at that point. Dr. Arkoth says, do quizzes and assignments in organic chemistry have to be descriptive? I feel this might give the answer away. So when we're talking about making something accessible, it's making sure that all learners in the course are able to do the same activity. So if you've got photos as a quiz, and there's no other version of it that folks who cannot see would use, I think that that would be a problem. But obviously, you wouldn't want to give the answers away in the photos if you have to have photos as part of your exam. So in that case, I think an alternative version would be the best way to do this. So it would be something where you have one version, and then you say for folks with vision problems, here's this other version of it. You're really asking them about their knowledge of the content. And if you're doing that for everyone in an effective way, then that's the real outcome that they're looking for. Right. Yeah. So April says, yeah, it's hard to describe. Oxygen attached to carbon, attached to carbon, attached. Yes, exactly. So you would really have to think through, if I'm using photos in an exam, how can I ask the same thing of students who cannot see? And how can I test their knowledge at the same level, but with a different format? I think it would have to be an alternative format at that point.
Jeff, I have a question. I'm
Yes.
Aditya Kaur from Fort Valley. I'm
Hello.
a geoscientist, and geoscience uses a lot of color in the maths.
Oh, yeah.
What is the way around it? I had a colorblind student in my class, and it was very difficult.
Yeah. So that's a really difficult part of this. If you've got a course where you're sharing third-party created stuff and it uses color to convey information and it doesn't do it any other way, that's going to be a difficult thing to convey to folks who have color blindness. I would probably, in the case that someone can't see something like that, I would work with the Disability Services Office to get a request in for that accommodation. That's something that's so specific that it really would need some customization. Now, if you're creating the maps, you should do them in a way where color is not the only thing that conveys information. But geoscience folks already know that. Like, to ethically make maps, you should be able to discern what they are if you're colorblind. But it does make sense that if you're using somebody else's and they haven't thought of that, you would have to then get a new version of it of some sort, or a way to convey that information that's different. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I will be right back. Hey, everybody. I am back. All right. We are going to get started on the next part of this. And this is all about the paperwork that will happen during the grant process. Now, you would think that the paperwork part of it would be something that was almost inconsequential, but it really is important. And it's important because your project cannot be funded until the institution has agreed to the project. And then we cannot disperse any funds until the institution has invoiced us after that agreement's done. And that's like the nutshell explanation of this whole thing and why it matters. But we'll get into some of the details here right now. So your service level agreement is with the institution, and the institution has one service level agreement for all of the proposals that were awarded at your institution. So at KSU, there are 10 different proposals in that one service level agreement. This changed. This didn't used to be the case. Used to be that it would be one agreement per project. Both the grants offices and the business office said, enough already. Let's just do one per institution. And we said, all right, we'll figure that out. So on paper, that project hasn't technically started in terms of what can be funded until the SLA is fully signed by the institution and then by the USG, signatories that are far above my pay grade. They both have to technically agree on the project before it starts. And because of that, we can't accept invoices until that SLA is fully signed and then returned to us, and then we send it over to the institution. So it's all directly connected to the funding. So an invoice is not something that you're going to generate personally and send over to us, unless you run your institution's grants office, in which case, I guess so. But it is usually a one-page document. Typically, it's a PDF. Sometimes folks send us Excel and we have to export it out to PDF. It's sent usually directly from the grants office or the business office, and it asks the USG to pay a particular amount for services in this SLA. Now, this is not the same thing that you would see if you went and got an expense report from your grant account at your institution. I've seen those before. They are like 8-page documents with tables with every single expense that happened. That's not the same thing. We're really just looking for an invoice from the institution. It's usually got the letterhead on it. It's got an invoice number. It's got a date. That's what we can actually send on to be paid. Dr. Hull says, will you please share these slides? Yes, we will. We will definitely share these slides. We will double check again to make sure everything is accessible before we send them out to you. And we are recording this and getting the transcript of it in order to distribute that alongside the slides. Yes, exactly. Dr. Banerjee, I was simultaneously answering your question as you typed it. The recording will be shared. So who invoices? It's not me, it's not you, it's the institution. If your institution has a foundation like the Georgia Southern Research Foundation, and they typically do all of the grants administration, our agreement is still with the institution. So it still has to come from Georgia Southern or Georgia Tech, and not the Georgia Tech Research Foundation. It seems technical, but when we're sending funds from the USG over in accounts payable to the institution, what account it winds up in depends on what the organization that the invoice came to was. Like they're what we would call the supplier at that point. So it has to be from the institution, not from a foundation within the institution. There are 2 invoices that you're going to have to make sure get sent to us for your project. The first one is once the SLA is fully signed, and that we send it back to say, here, it's signed by the USG. An initial invoice goes to us for the first half of those grant funds. Then we get the invoice. Oh, yeah, appreciate it.
Today, as you stand on the cusp of entering a new.
There we go. Yep. So if anybody's steps into your office, then that's when microphones go off. So that's why I do wind up muting y'all. So sorry about that if I do. But if you do have anything to ask, absolutely do unmute yourself, and we will totally do that. All right. So we sends that on to accounts payable. Accounts payable then sends the funds as the University System of Georgia over to the institution for that project. And then your institution can bring it to the right grant account at that point. We do it through an electronic transfer of funds. That's usually ACH. They tend to know how that all works over in your business office or your grants office, but sometimes they may not know if a particular payment went through or not, because the system office will go, well, we have like 5 invoices that we need to pay at the same time. 3 of them are ALG and one's a STEM grant, and we're going to send them all over at the same time because that's the most effective way to do it. And so they'll send it, and it comes in as University System Office, and nobody's quite aware that it's an Affordable Learning Georgia thing. If that ever happens, where they're like, we don't know if we received that payment, have them email me. We will check on that immediately. We've got it in our tracking when stuff is sent. And so we can check on the date. When they have the date, they can go back. They usually see System Office, and then they break it out and they go, oh, yep, there it is. So it's fine most of the time. If somebody didn't get a payment and we look at it and we go, oh my goodness, we didn't send that invoice, or we go, we didn't get that invoice, then we have to do something real quick. So, all right, Nikita, do you want to run this quiz?
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Got a little bit of lag time. There we go. All right, everyone. So it's quiz time. We want you to put your answers in the chat. We do have the answer coming up pretty soon, but not yet. So hold off on that click, Jeff. The quiz is true or false. A project officially starts when the award email is sent. Is that true or false? Okay, we've got some coming in. We've got some false, false, false. Okay, okay. I think we've been paying attention. Please keep those answers coming, because yes, indeed, it is false. So on paper, the project starts only after your institution's SLA is fully executed. Until then, the USG cannot legally process payments. Great, we can move on now, Jeff. Good job, everybody.
Okay, now the other part of this is the part that you will be sending us, not the institution. These are the reports. We need to know how your report is going, or how your project is going, and then at the end, we need to know how your project went and what the deliverables are that you're sending in. So we have these reports to do that. There are some deadlines to keep in mind. We do them by semester, and we do summer, fall, and spring. So there's one at the end of the summer. You can see that this is kind of near the start of the fall. It's because we want to give everybody the chance to do their grading and then be able to send in their report. Summer 2026, the deadline is August 10th. Fall is December 18th. And then spring is May 14th. We try to keep things as far away from the grading part as we can without going into the next semester. That does create a couple of issues. December 18th is quite close to what a lot of folks will call the holiday season. People will be out of the office. If it's not you, it's the grants office, it's the business office, it's me. That will happen. So we will be moving email around, and we will be making sure that if we go on a break, that when we come back, everything is accounted for. But yeah, we're especially doing this to make sure that you have the time to create these reports as a semester ends. Now, whether or not you have to submit a final or semester report has to do with which kind of project you have. So right now, if you have a transformation grant, there's a May deadline coming up for reporting. You don't have to do that because you're round 29. You just got started. Your semester status report would be, we just got started. And so we don't need to know that part. There's no reporting needed for you in spring of 2026. Once, if you're a transformation grant project, you hit the summer deadline, you check in with us with a semester status report. If you have a continuous improvement grant, you've got a project to create some stuff, and it's going to go until the end. And at the end, you're going to submit the report on how it went, and you're going to submit the materials. With transformation grants, there are many different moving parts, including things like making sure that your department agrees on particular resources. There's a lot of implementation that happens before stuff gets into the classroom. So that's why we have these semester reports for transformation grants. If you've got a continuous improvement grant or a research grant, you've got your project, you don't have to do a semester status report. Now, these deadlines are always on a very important page. It's in the syllabus of Affordable Learning Georgia. This Grantee Information Center page has all of the reporting guidelines. It has the deadlines by the semester that they're attached to. It tells you exactly where you can find your own semester. It has the template for the semester status report if you need to do it offline. It has the online form itself. It has a final report way to submit the entire report. It also has the Word template for each type of project. So if you're a research grant and you're doing a final report, it's going to be very different than if you're replacing all of your materials and saving students money in the classroom for the first time. That's a transformation grant. So be sure to use your type of report's correct final report. Yes, so CI grants will report out at the deadline for the project itself, not in between for the semester ones. Yeah. So if you're a transformation grant and you have a semester status report due, it is a Google form. Keep that in mind if you are going overseas, because some places do block Google from time to time. And if that happens, send me an email and we can work out a non-Google way to get your report in. This is just to track progress. It is not something that needs to be super comprehensive. It's a way for us to make sure that everything's going okay and that you don't have any crucial issues or big changes in personnel or questions for us that haven't been answered. And it's always available on that link on the Grantee Information Center page. And so we ask things like, okay, well, who are you? What's your proposal? Because we need to know that part in order to get to the rest of it. But are you on track? Which phase of implementation are you doing? Remember, this is a transformation grant. So you might be creating stuff during one semester. You might be putting it into the course in another semester. Your list of materials. Now, if you're using 2 or 3 open materials that are pre-existing, you can just put them in the Google Doc and that's fine. If you have a long list of them, like you are adopting a whole bunch of stuff for a big reading list, just say that you're going to send over a Word document and an attachment. You can send it over to me through email, and I will just put it in Google Drive and attach it that way. So we're also asking about, like, if you're reviewing materials, how's that going? If you're hosting any materials on your own site or your own server, how's that going? How's the redesign of your course going if that's part of your project? Any other work that needs to be done, any catch-all stuff, any changes in personnel. So we want to make sure that we've got your team up to date. Any big changes to the student savings impact or the amount of students that you're affecting. If it's like, well, we estimated that this would affect 100 students in the semester and it affected 102, that's okay. We don't have to worry too much about that. If suddenly enrollment drops by half and it's going to be that way for the rest of time, that's a huge impact estimate change, and you want to put it there. And then just any other questions you have for us, because we want to make sure that you're all doing okay. The final report is for everyone. In your final semester of the project, that's when you're going to have to submit your final report by that deadline. That is always on the Grantee Information Center page. And there are pathways in the online form to submit the final report that will go to transformation grants, continuous improvement grants, and research grants. But the templates are different. So you wouldn't click on the transformation grant template and then just go into the research grant one. That's just a Word document. When it comes to the online form where you're really submitting your final report, it will direct you from one to the other. So when you're ready to do that, when you've hit the final deadline, probably think at least a couple weeks out when you think about writing this report, if not sooner, because there may be some things that you need to get from other folks before you can even get started. Plan that out quickly. Check that out, and then for transformation, you can submit up to 5 items, but they're not all necessary. What is necessary is your Word document final report. If you've analyzed any kind of data to come to the conclusions that are in your report, you can send that data in a zip folder. We will not be sharing out that data unless you really want us to, in which case we'll make sure that there isn't any personal identifiable information for students before we get that out there. And a syllabus, but really what we're looking for is how did you use the resources in your course? So if you've got a course schedule that has each topic that you're doing and which resources you're using, or you've got a big open textbook that you're using, which chapters are you using for each week? Something like that will help other instructors look at your report and go, okay, so that's how they did it. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. We don't necessarily just need a syllabus full of policies at your institution. We know those. That's okay. That's not what we need. We especially need to know how you use the resources in your course so that other instructors will know how you use the resources in your course and consider it for themselves. If you have a continuous improvement grant, it's a little bit different. But you don't need a syllabus for that one, but you'd still need that Word document. For both of them, if you want to submit a photo of your team or your class to use in future ALG publications, you can do that. We used to require this, not anymore. We used to need a lot of photos. We don't need photos as much, nearly as much anymore. Also, if you have your second invoice, the invoice for the end of the project, then send it in with the final report. That makes it so much quicker than having to confirm that you've submitted the final report, then get somebody to send the invoice, and then the invoice comes to me. But institutions often want the proof that you've already submitted your final report before they send the invoice. So that's going to vary. Whatever works best for your institution and gets the invoice over to us is best for us. And of course, if you are submitting a transformation grant or a continuous improvement grant, you're going to make sure that you have the final materials in there as well. So the open educational resources that you've created under this grant, we are going to be sharing those out under an open license, and they will be making a bigger educational impact across the globe. Now, for research grants, it is the same exact thing as continuous improvement grants. You will need the Word report and then any materials that you've created as a part of that. But really, it's that research report. It's the same way. And if your materials have a small file size, you can put them in the final report online form. It has a like 10 megabyte limit to it. So any kind of larger file won't go through that document. That's okay. Email will not do it either. So really do send it over in some sort of storage space. If that's the case, just send it over to me in a Google form, a Google folder, a Dropbox folder, a Box folder, whichever that you use that can share things from you to someone who's not in your institutional domain. If you host them on your campus webpage, just send us a link and we'll be able to get to them. You can attach them in an email, but again, there are file size limits on email too, so it's your mileage may vary. It's usually about 20 megabytes or so on email before your email service will say that's enough. We can't do more than that. But we don't really. It doesn't really matter the method in which you get them to us. The fact is that you've gotten them to us. We're going to host them after that on OpenALG, and we're going to link over to that on ALG Commons. So it's fine so long as we get the materials. So yeah, for transformation grants, at the end of each semester deadline, so the next one for you would be summer 2026 in August. If it's not your final semester, you submit a semester status report. If it is your final semester, you submit a final report. For a continuous improvement grant or a research grant, at the end of each semester deadline, if it's not your final semester, we don't need anything from you. If it is your final semester, you submit your final report. All of these deadlines and all of these links are in the Grantee Information Center. And if you're wondering, what is my deadline? That is on your institution's SLA. It'll be on the first main page of the agreement or the second page, depending on how long the title is. It has a table. It will list the grant number. It will list the project lead, and then it will list the course. So you'll know exactly which one is yours, and then it'll give you the final semester on that same part. So yeah, just another quick reminder, just to make sure. August 10th is the summer deadline. December 18th is the fall deadline. Spring 2027, you've got May 14th, 2027. I can't believe I'm saying 2027 like it's going to be a thing that is around the corner, but I say this and then suddenly it's May 14th, 2027. So be sure to plan out everything with that deadline in mind. Your deadline's on that SLA. When in doubt, be sure to check it. Yep, just as Nikita says, keep a copy on hand for quick reference. Have it somewhere where you can just go right to it and be like, yep, that's my grant number. Oh, that's my date. And bookmark that Grantee Information Center page. I've got it on the chat box up here. It's very important. I will sometimes send it out just in case anyone's missed it, but have it ready to go. So let's talk a little bit about communications. This is more of a quick part, just guidelines on when I'm going to be sending an email or when am I going to be attending another meeting. So when you're sending an email to us about something in your project, some of you have done more than one project and you're a name, you are not a number, but your project is a number. So for example, I see, yeah, okay. So I see plenty of folks in here who have had more than one project over many years. So if let's see here. Yeah, okay. So if Dr. Dakane, if you let me know, okay, in my project, well, this happened and what can we do? I would have to go and find out which one of those projects it was. Some folks, instructional designers who have helped out with so many projects, if they asked me about the project that they worked on, they'd be asking me about one of 20 projects because they've been such a great help for so many. So yeah, that's especially why it's important to include your grant number. Now you got that on the email that was sent to you at first, but it's also going to be on your service level agreement. So that, yeah, so that's where you want to check it out, is check your SLA for that. You're going to be added to a grantees listserv. We may change how this distribution works in the future, but for now, we've got one listserv for all of our grantees. That means folks who have been on a project for a while and still want to be informed of what's going on, they are still on there until they unsubscribe, and you'll be added on along with round 28. So those projects are all together in one place. So we're going to put in the subject line who this is for when we send something out to grantees. So for all grantees, it will just say all grantees. For you, for round 29 grantees, it would be R29 grantees. If you ever get an email down the line and your grant project's done and you don't have another one, and you see that there's deadlines on it and you go, oh my goodness, I can't believe that I have a report due. Well, you don't. I've just been emailing the grantees list and the whole list gets it. Check the subject line. In the future, we may change how this works, thanks to better tech out there than there used to be when it comes to listservs. And yeah, we're hoping that this can be more efficient in the future. But until then, we've got a grantees listserv, and just check the subject line to make sure it applies to you. If you have any personal questions, you wouldn't be sending them over the listserv. If, let's say, you have a family emergency that might delay something, let us know at our email addresses, and we'll get right back to you on that. The midpoint check-in meeting is going to be on January 8th. So once the holiday break's over and those of us who consider that the holiday break are back, in January 8th, we're going to have the midpoint check-in. That's going to be a time for us to all get back together and regroup, think about like what has to happen at the second half of this project. And we'll have some folks who talk about how it's been for them as experienced grantees in the midpoint of their project. So yeah, we'll reconvene then. Bring any questions that you get along the way if you haven't already sent them to us, because of course, definitely send us an email with any questions along the way. But yeah, show off what your team's done by that point, and it'll be really neat. So I'm going to go to the second quiz break for Nikita.
All right, everyone. You should have known there was going to be another pop quiz before we ended this out. So, and plus, I put my face on the screen so you knew I was coming back. Quiz break number 2, question 1 of 2, true or false? A transformation grant requires a report every semester. Please drop in the chat your response. True or false? A transformation grant requires a report every semester. True or false? All right, we've got a lot of people, they feel like it's true. Keep going. Let's see how many responses we have so far. Okay, that's pretty good. They're feeling pretty confident, Jeff. Let's see what the answer is. It is indeed true. Thank you guys for paying attention. Only transformation grants submit a semester status report in addition, right? Unless it's the final semester, in which case they submit a final report, which would replace the semester report. So if you're in a transformation grant, this is a good way to keep up with your project over the long haul. Transformation grants require that. Okay, let's move on to question number 2. Question number 2, if you'll drop your answer in the chat. When emailing ALG, what should always be included? Course title, A, B, a grant number, C, an instructor CV, or D, the budget amount? All right, so people are responding pretty quickly here, and they're feeling pretty confident about the answer being B. Let's see who else. Let's see. We've got some good. Indeed. Thank you, Jeff. It is indeed the grant number. The grant numbers are a unique number, and they're easily searchable. And since one person or title can be associated with multiple projects and over multiple years, grant numbers prevent the confusion and delayed response times that can often come with just a name or a course. So I appreciate that. Remember, your SLA will have your grant number, and it is a unique number to you. The continuing education, continuous improvement grants include an M in the front of the grant number, and the transformation grants are just a number at this time. And the research grants include an R, I believe, in front of theirs. So, all right, well, thank you guys. All right, Jeff, back to you.
All right, so we've refreshed ourselves on what open is. We've talked a lot about accessibility and the many complexities that come with accessibility requirements. We've talked about our paperwork, the signed SLA. We've talked about the invoice. We've talked a little bit about email communications, making sure that you include your grant number, and you can always check your grant number and your deadline on the service level agreement. So does anybody have any last questions before we adjourn? There's going to be one from us at the end, so don't leave yet.
And again, feel free to unmute yourself or drop in the chat if you have questions. We'll just pause here for let you guys gather your thoughts.
Yeah, because we went on break and this and questions surfaced in the middle of that, I'm going to give it a little time here. Okay, that's enough awkward silence. Let's go to your final question, and I'll bring it over to Nikita for this one.
Indeed. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today, but we have a bit of a question for you. It's more of an inspiration question. We want you to respond in the chat, please. I would like for you guys to think about a headline. Write the headline you hope someone will write about your project 1 year from now. So after the final project report has been submitted and published, what is the headline you hope someone will write about your project 1 year from now? One of the examples I have here is my new OER toolkit cut costs for 10,000 students. That's what they wanted to be remembered for. Or perhaps community-led research model changes policy. What would be the headline you hope someone writes about your project 1 year from now? And you don't have to type it. You can unmute and say it out loud if that would be easier. I'll have to give you a minute or two to think on it, I'm sure. Oh, thanks, Jeff. He said this has happened. All right, so we have Dr. Lal, philosophy open resource model saves first-year students considerable amount. So savings is important, good there. Dr. Munier, a very important resource to move French language instruction forward in Georgia and across the nation. Indeed, we want to touch more than just students in Georgia because that's what open is all about. And Dr. Briggs, new faculty finds FYC templates easy to navigate. That would be helpful. If we can support faculty with templates that are easy to navigate, and when it impacts us, the faculty, it impacts the students. Thank you for that. Okay, Dr. Kravitz, revise course templates, reduce workload for overworked adjunct instructors. Indeed, again, as we benefit and support the faculty and the teachers that are giving our students what they need, the students benefit. So as we support each other in student success, students will indeed benefit from that. So Dr. Bike says, new course template gives human development away. Okay, I'm not sure I'm reading that one correctly, but we'll keep going here because they are coming in now, and I really appreciate you guys sharing your inspiration. Quality education and investment, not a cost. That I like that. It's a really good tagline there. I hope you're paying attention because maybe we'll use some of these in the press releases as your projects continue to get recognition. A collection of business and workplace communications teaching resources provide a free alternative that supports students. Love that. All right, everyone. They're coming in kind of fast now, so I won't read everyone through here, but I will indeed keep note of these. I'll skip over a couple here. See, Jeff, do you see a couple coming in as well that's catching your eye?
April's telling some jokes. A free software a day keeps the software vendors away. Just kidding, still thinking. Enterprise Cloud Fundamentals, simplified and accessible. Very cool.
Organic chemistry explained through the sustainable world we live in. That makes a lot of sense. And a beneficial resource that supports and develops students' thinking and conceptual understanding in CA, supported by AI.
Very neat.
Yeah, I appreciate this, guys, because not only do we want you to think about the momentum of getting started, that's what today's kickoff meeting is about, right? Not just about all the information you've got to now consolidate and put together to synthesize for your project, but certainly to take the momentum of your excitement all the way through the end. It's a long haul. It's a long project. It's a long year, and you need this momentum to keep you going all the way through this excitement. And so thinking about what the end result might look like and what you're really trying to accomplish through these projects, through this inspiration question is what we're trying to accomplish here. So I appreciate you participating. And let's see, no more buying $150 calculators that you'll use for 4 exams and never again. We do appreciate that. And Rockstar educators make courses cheaper despite tuition hikes. We really appreciate that as well, because the no cost aspect of these projects is really important. Low cost and no cost, but also all the pedagogical impacts, and as well as supportive impacts to faculty that are now also supporting student success.
It's a good point too, that like we are one contributor, but not the only contributor to student costs. And it's something to keep in mind all the time. The things that we have under our control, the fact that you're here taking that control and being able to save students some money in a way that you can, I think that that's really neat.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. All right, well, as we're moving through this last slide or two, please continue to keep those coming in the chat. But I'll turn it over to Jeff because we're here at the end.
Well, thank you so much for attending. And I know that this has been a lot of information, but we're always here for your questions. Send them in to us at jeffduckalan@usg.edu and nakita.afaha@usg.edu. If we don't know the answer, we will send it to whoever does. And we tend to have a good reputation as email responders. Maybe a little too good, because then we wind up with a lot of email, but it's okay. Like, send it in. And also be sure that you get in contact with your ALG champions. So there are champions at your institution who specialize in instruction, in librarianship, and also in instructional design. And they are amazing points of contact for your institution. So here, I'll share the Staff and Champions page. On there, you can click on Find Your Local Champion, and there's a search bar there to find your institution. Some institutions have 2 sets of champions because there was a merger, or there are 2 different campuses who wanted to have some contacts there as well. These guys know OER, they know ALG, and then inside and out. So get in contact with your champions if you have any big questions about what could help at your institution and what you can use right there.
Indeed. And we didn't use the whole time this time, so maybe, Jeff, after we close out, we can just kind of hang on for a second in case any questions do show up.
Yeah. So we're going to officially end the meeting, and I'm going to stop recording. Thank you so much for being here, and we cannot wait to see the results of your projects and the cool resources that will affect not only your course, but other courses across the globe in the future. So thank you so much, and I will stop recording now.
Thanks, guys.